All right, here we are.
Here we are.
Tampa Fishing Outfitters live fishing report.
For maybe one more show.
Yep. Big exciting news coming down the pipeline here shortly. But, man, what a busy week, huh?
Busy week.
Definitely. So we got a lot to talk about, man. Fishing's been good. This is that time of year when if you could deal with the heat, you know, you can get into about whatever you want. You know what I mean? You can go out and tarpon fish, you go out and snapper fish, grouper fish, mackerel fish, snook fish, redfish, trout fish, redfish, bluefish. You know, any type of fishing you want to do right now, you can almost do. I love it. You know, it does get hot, but I do like it.
Yeah, it's been an interesting week, or you know, kind of following up with last week and then going into this week. I think we're going to see a substantial change in several different things. You know, obviously the heat has gotten upon us, right? It's been really hot.
It's on us.
But now we've had this rain that's going to come, and I think we're getting into that rainy season finally now. We're going to get that rain, which means the humidity is going to come up even higher, and it'll be dodging thunder and lightning storms and dodging the heat when it's not raining. So condition-wise, it's going to change a little bit. I can tell you real quick, the one thing that I noticed this morning from the last few days is the amount of fresh water. We're starting to get the river runoff. Sure. It's moving into the flats. The water's dirtied up. And it made a little bit of a challenge catching bait this morning. Right. I noticed a little bit of a change in the bite in some of the areas that I was fishing. Now, granted, I haven't been fishing a ton inshore, right? Mm-hmm. I've been bay fishing a lot, and as we'll talk about in a few minutes, we'll probably touch on a little story incident that James and I happened to be involved with. But my boat's in the shop, so today I ran the skiff, and we ventured out for a little inshore trip and did pretty good. But there was definitely the sign of fresh water, the sign of fish not wanting to cooperate, bait not wanting to cooperate. So that's all coming. And then we got pushed off the water at about 2:30 or so.
Yeah, it rained good today, man.
But fishing was good. We caught a lot of snook, caught a few redfish, didn't do any trout, caught some mangrove snappers, so it was good.
Cool. Yeah, we definitely had an incident on the water. We, like you said, your boat was down Friday. You and I talked Friday night, and I happened to have the day off, so we kind of partnered up to run a tarpon trip with another guy.
Fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and we'll get to talking about that and how efficient we were and how many different things we could do. That was cool, but you know, I think something to touch on, and just everybody, a good reminder to everybody out on the water. I think this story can, help drum up some memories or get you thinking about maybe the next time you're on the water when you see something going wrong, to just lend a hand. But fortunately enough, we were on the same boat together. We were leaving your dock, heading out to the fishing grounds, and we saw what we thought at first was a boat on fire.
A boat on fire. Yeah, that's what it looked like. It definitely looked like a boat on fire. And
lots of smoke, lots of flame coming out.
You know, and everything sort of happens for a reason, I believe, right? Yeah. And I mean, there was a couple boats that were driving by, drove right by. There was 2 or 3 boats on the inside of them, on the inside of the bar, and then there was another boat on the outside of us running. And you were obviously paying attention more so to driving the boat, right? And I kind of caught it out the corner of my eye. And I noticed it, and I was like, wait a minute, he's on fire, you know? And so everybody obviously kind of pointed our attention to it, but we noticed it was flares. And that was the moment when it all hit.
We knew something was wrong.
You know, hey, listen, whatever we're doing, it doesn't matter at this point. And we
told the group to buckle up, sit down.
Yeah, sit down, we're going in. So the crazy thing was we had a doctor on the boat. You know, we had 2 guys that were proficient at running boats. And we were able to get this certain individual medical attention pretty quick. Yeah. So
good on him for getting that flare off.
That's right.
I mean, and I spoke to him today. I know you spoke to him too, and he's doing well. Thank goodness. That's really all that matters is he got the attention. He's doing fine now, and hopefully sooner than later we'll see him back on the water. But good on him for getting the flare off. I don't know that in a crisis situation where something's wrong with your body. I don't know how many people would have the wherewithal to, get that flare out,
Right.
get it off, and get somebody's attention. But I think that's just a good reminder or something to put in the back of your head to
be on the lookout.
Know that.
Be on the lookout.
Yeah, you got to be. If you're the one in distress, you got to get another boater's attention.
Mm-hmm.
And there's, I'm telling you, flare on the water.
Several ways. I mean, the Coast Guard lays it out pretty good for you.
Mm-hmm.
And most people, that's the thing. You have all the safety equipment on your boat, but how many folks actually know how to use it?
Mm-hmm.
Or that would be their first reaction. I mean, obviously a cell phone nowadays is probably going to be the first go-to, which he had. He had already called 911. He had 911 on the phone. And when he realized that he may be incapacitated, he started firing off flares.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. And it was a Saturday, so there was several other boats on the water. But a Tuesday, Wednesday may not be the situation, may not be the case, and so it just happened to be a fortunate instance where we were around.
Doctor right there to give him assess the situation.
Keep me from having a heart attack.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're glad he's doing well, and hopefully, lesson learned. It was funny. I talked to Jason after the fact, and he was kind of like, another one, and it just seems like
they always find you.
Yeah, this is not the first time this type of a situation has came up with me, and certainly don't look for it, but I definitely keep my eye out for it. And that's if anybody can take anything from that little story, and I don't want to go too much into detail about it, but keep an eye out for everybody out there. No matter what you're doing, I don't care if you're on a big tarpon, I don't care if you're trying to be the first one to the fishing hole, or you got to get bait by 8 o'clock, or whatever the case may be. If there's somebody that's in distress,
drop what you're doing.
You sort of owe it to them to go over there and check them out. We don't have police officers sitting on the points of the mangroves. There's not an ambulance or a firehouse, within a couple miles of every corner. So it's sort of our obligation out there to help others, or to at least look out for them in certain situations.
It's that boater's code,
Just please do that for you and your others. It'll definitely save somebody one day if you happen to run across them. So
for sure.
Anyway,
well, I think we were blessed that day with the fishing.
So yeah, let's follow up with the good side of things, which they both were good things at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But we left there. We ran back to my dock. We got him on an ambulance. We jumped back on your boat, and off we went. And ended up getting 2 really nice grouper.
Yeah.
Flew a tarpon.
Yep.
And I want to say, I'm going to just throw a number of like 35 sharks.
Yeah, the sharks were insane. Which they enjoyed,
Caught some mackerel. So
stingrays.
Stingrays. Yeah. I mean, you name it. It was going on, baby. But, they wanted to go tarpon fishing, and they wanted to have something to take home for dinner.
Right.
And that's a tough combination a lot of the times. Fortunately, this time of year, it's possible.
Yeah.
So
tarpon and grouper, fortunately in Tampa Bay, I'd say whether you're kind of fishing in and around Egmont, in and around Skyway, or inside the bay, most of that habitat is kind of shared. Now, the exact spot, maybe not, but overall, it's not like you can't say, all right, hey, let me put a grouper bait down, or let's try and go for let's slide over to this and try and get a grouper, and the tackle's the same. And, so we got 2 Saturday, but throughout that week in some of the areas that I was tarpon fishing, we connected with some keeper grouper often. So we bagged a few throughout the week, one that was really big, was impressive. But what I want to say, and we talked about grouper last week, and we kind of talked about that slack tide thing, it always seemed like it was a low in the tide, and I'll tell you what we never did is we never added any weight. We kind of kept our same chum slick going that we would for tarpon, and just drifted a bigger bait down and really just tried to wait for it to get to the bottom, and that's how we got those grouper. And same thing last week. So, I'll tell you, you don't always feel like you need that knocker rig or 1 or 2 ounce weight. And we touched on it. I think we caught 2. I had 2 other groups that at least had 1 in the boat in the past week, and none of them ever came on anything with weight on it. It was just same rig.
We've caught tarpon on cut baits, big cut baits on the bottom.
Yep.
We've caught tarpon on the chum slick approach,
Mm-hmm.
cut threadies. And we've also caught tarpon on live, baits so far this year. And so, but it's like we talk about tarpon fishing. You gotta kind of have everything, right? And much like the groupers, the tarpon, in my opinion, sort of will take different baits at certain parts of the tide or certain times of the day, and so having that plethora of baits available will create success for the most part.
Especially when you have a few rods, a few people on the boat that can all drop down something. If we can put like a half-dead mullet, a half-dead thready, and a live big greenie or a live big thready, that's a nice thing to have as well, is have that ability to put them all down there at the same time.
And I can tell you one of the big things, and you were talking about how you're catching grouper on just a straight free line bait.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much we're tarpon fishing,
mm-hmm.
but we have no tide, so those baits are getting down.
Go
right?
straight down.
And one of the things that we don't ever, we do talk about it, but one of the big things that has been a game changer for using lead and different size lead, and is the trolling motor, like our Rodan GPS anchor, because like what we were doing on Saturday, you want to fish in 30 foot, you want to fish in 25 foot, you want to fish in 15 foot. And so if you're doing that, let's say a lot of times you throw the hook, right? Well, you can start swinging, and then the next thing you know, you're fishing in 35,
42,
this and that. And so for me, like if I'm on the hook, a lot of times I'll use lead and say, all right, I want those baits to be sitting on the ledge or on the hill or on the bottom, down in the trough. And so with the trolling motor, though, you're able to sit in that spot and then manipulate the way you're fishing throughout the tides.
Exactly.
And so, if you are grouper fishing, like, I said, well, let's slide up a little bit. Let's get into like 40 foot if we're going to do some grouper fishing, and the tide's still going this way, so we'll draw those groupers up out of 30 foot, 28 foot. But if you sit on top of them, you're going to be fishing in 18 feet. Right? So you got to sort of play the game and bump around, whereas if you're using lead, you can sort of peg that bait on the bottom.
Keep it stationary.
If I know it's 20 feet behind me, I can throw that bait out. But that's what's cool about this time of year, especially when you get a good chum slick going. Throughout the tide swings, you can almost stay in the same spot and fish the 12 foot, fish 18, fish 30, fish 40.
Yep.
And at different times, different species are going to come up out of those areas. For me, the tarpon have been, 30 minutes to 45 minutes around the slack tide. Like, hadn't been the greatest on the slack tide, but during that transition when it just starts to move a little bit, they've been a little happier. So that's when we've been really focusing on tarpon. But we've been picking up the groupers as well. So it's been good.
Yeah, hey, Eric Aston here, dropping 30s for grouper. Last week, I'll be honest with you, all the fishing I did, that's primarily what I had. There was a few days here and there where I had some big pinfish and other stuff, but when you said that we got fish on all baits, that was really the first time I'd hooked any fish lately in that scenario on live bait. Primarily, it's been dead bait in a controlled drift and really trying to mix it in with chum. That's been the ticket for me. But I did see. Actually, I think we were on separate boats on different trips, but I saw some fish really responding to live bait the other day. When we were putting it out there, kind of just one of those end of the day. Man, I've been looking at these fish, haven't really seen them hook up for an hour, put some bait out there just to get rid of it, and then boom,
fire off.
They're firing off on it. So
especially these larger, pilchards that we've been getting, they're great tarpon baits.
Yeah. What's up, Armando? Hey, Mike.
Again, that goes with like kind of reading the fish. There's been some in the bay, up by the bridge, out in some of the main shipping channels. There's been some big balls of small threadies, and then even like glass minnows or looks like small white baits.
Yep.
And these things are going nuts. I mean, they're coming up, 8 and 10 fish at a time, tail slapping and eating these big balls of bait as they're transitioning through the bay.
No doubt.
And if you can find that, which in some of the areas that we fish, you sit there long enough and that stuff sort of moves around to you, and you could be seeing bait and birds working, and then all of a sudden the tarpon are there. In transition they find that bait pod or whatever, and that's a perfect scenario for, easing up to that school, throwing some live bait out. They start seeing the the bait's running off the outside of these big bait schools,
Yep.
and you can pick one off.
Yep.
And so that's two of the instances where we caught them on live bait was that same scenario.
Yeah, and this time of year, guys, don't running around the bay. We had some really good weather. Was it at the start of last week, and I think through the previous week. I know this weekend really started to blow. We started to finally get some of that rain, but prior to that, when we had that good stretch of weather, and I was covering a lot of ground. I had some longer trips, 6 and 8 hour trips, where I wasn't afraid to make some longer runs, traveling through the bay. Seeing the bait pods and watching birds work. I was driving around checking them out. Now, there's a lot of times a year I won't do that because I feel pretty confident in what I'm going to stumble upon. But this time of year, don't ever assume it's only going to be one species.
No.
Some of the coolest things you can run up on this time of year are when you see a bait pod like that and you do have some happy tarpon going through them. Granted, in my past, it always hasn't been the biggest ones, but it's been cooperative fish that if you can get a live bait and pitch it in there, it's you get some doubles and stuff. So pay attention to those.
And we were talking cobia a few weeks back, and I've caught quite a few cobia over the last, I'd say, 2.5 weeks.
Yeah,
we've sort of
sick of getting you sending me those pictures.
we've sort of just kind of added it in, and it's really been a nice transition fishing thing where, hey guys, we're gonna slide over to this next spot. Let's go look around out here. And we had some really nice weather days, mid to early afternoon, and we found some cobias out in the middle on bait pods. We found some on the range markers and towers, but there's been a lot of activity going on, through the bay, like you said. And so the biggest thing with a lot of that is being ready. A lot of times you don't get a lot of time.
Right.
I can remember at least 2 or 3 of the cobia that we caught. I pulled up to a marker and checked it, and I kind of made a half circle, didn't see anything, and all of a sudden out of the corner of my eye I saw the cobia. And I had my rod ready with a big eel on it, flipped it out, he instantly ate it, and it was game over.
Yeah.
In like 5 seconds. But there was a few other instances where we pulled up, did a loop around, saw the cobia, made another loop around, got the rod, and he was gone, and I never saw him again. So I will say, don't take your time to the fullest on cobia.
Yeah.
If you want to catch one, get a bait to them as soon as possible.
Yep.
Because they're up on the surface a majority of the time eating. They're up there happy eating.
Yep.
I've seen them. We've been seeing them blowing up thready schools. 2 of the ones we caught were puking up thread fins.
Yep.
They emptied their entire belly when they got to the boat.
That sonar thing I have now.
Oh yeah.
So when we were catching bait, we were seeing some big things. Well, yesterday I covered a lot of ground.
Yeah.
And it was too choppy for me, and I don't have a tower, so it's kind of choppy for me to watch a top.
Right.
Man, I saw some confirmed cobia on there.
Oh yeah.
On sometimes several. So
yeah.
That's another way to do it.
They're around. They're definitely around.
Eric, so hey, I want to talk. We just got asked a question here from Eric, and I've got this was over the weekend. So he actually texted me because he checked on a bait place, got it really good, and this was within 15 minutes of him loading as well, right? So he's like, what could that be? And I gave him my opinion, but he wants to know your opinion, because I already went back and forth with him on what my opinion was. 15 minutes with him catching it and putting it in as well.
I'd have to see the well running to see what it looks like.
Assuming
honestly.
It's pumping.
Assuming it's pumping. There's a lot of bait in there, though, too.
Yep.
This time of year, and those are big baits.
Yep.
So this time of year, you can't load a live well like you would load it in early April, March.
Yep.
And, depending on what type of setup you have. And to be honest with you, a taller live well in the summertime is going to work better.
Yeah.
Because you're going to get a
temperature difference
swing from top to bottom. You're gonna turn that water over a little bit better, and you're going to be able to hold more bait. But I'd have to see that thing pumping, man, to be honest with you.
It was almost instant and all the bait in the well. I told him in that scenario,
then if it's almost instant, then maybe did you bleach the live wells? Did you do something like that?
But yeah, I mean, for it to happen that quick, I've seen it with the big baits. Even when I told you I hit some bait good yesterday, and one thing. So here, this can probably benefit everybody. Is one thing I had to do yesterday is I brought in a lot of bait that was really large, all scaled sardines, white bait, and put it in the well quick, right? Like I know I need to get in there quick because I don't want to get beat up in the net, but this was a lot of bait at one time, so it's hard for me to manage the net and do all that. We've all been there, right? Well, when it went in the well, it wasn't doing so hot. Mm-hmm. So we call it, and Brian Major, I know you're watching, we've had to do this before in some inferior live wells, is you have to babysit the bait at first. Mm-hmm. Get your hand in there and keep swirling it around. Don't let them sit down. So, and that can happen this time of year, especially when you pull it off a marker in a high volume, and a lot of it goes into the well at the same time. Is they're stunned, they're lethargic, they're in shock, they won't swim, and if you don't get that circulation really going, like you just can't let them sit still. So for about 10 minutes before I threw the net again, that's all I was doing was just creating that circulation inside the well manually. And it'll work as long as you don't have any sunblock or anything on your hand, you'll be fine. So that might just be a tip. Eric, I know where you said it, you probably didn't hit all that in one throw, so I'd imagine that was being added slowly to the well, or maybe 50 to 100 baits at a time. So I would really check for contaminants. Hopefully at the end of the day you rinse that out with fresh water really, really well just to eliminate that. But those are some things you can do, and especially if you're going out with a buddy or something, as you're throwing the net and bringing that bait back to the well, have somebody sitting there. Maybe it's not so important to chum. Have that person sitting there and really swirling it and keeping
especially
it
Especially on
flowing.
the flats, you get a lot of grass. It gets hung up in the drain tubes. You got to make sure that's all clear.
Yep.
One of the things that I've been doing when I get bait on the flats is I'll generally always empty it into a basket like that we have here at TFO. Mm-hmm. I use the smaller ones, right? Yeah. But I'll dump it into there, mm-hmm. and then a lot of times there's a lot of pinfish right now.
Yeah.
Depending on where you're getting bait, and so I always take it and put the basket in the water, and I shovel out the couple handfuls of grass that's in there, and I'll try to scrape through some of the pinfish if there's a ton of the small ones. Yeah. And then what I'll do is I'll take it out and I'll scrape the white baits kind of out of the pinfish. Mm-hmm. And then if it takes me a few minutes, I'll put them back in the water on the side of the boat, mm-hmm. kind of let them chill for a minute, lift them up, scrape the rest of the white baits out. And that seemed to really help keep some of those baits a little bit better than setting them, in that basket. Now, you don't want to dump. I mean, I'm throwing that 12-foot net. I mean, I'm getting a lot of pinfish and a lot of white bait and a lot of grass all at the same time. Yep. There's a lot of white bait in there. I mean, you figure the basket's half to 3/4 full with stuff.
Yep.
And half of that's probably white bait and half of it's probably small pinfish. So
nice thing about the white baits, if you keep shaking it, if you keep that thing moving, the white baits will usually flip themselves to the top. Mm-hmm. Unless you just absolutely get 500 baits in one throw mixed with pinfish. Right. Then at that point, dude, I'm just dumping it and sorting it out later.
Right.
But when we're talking 50 to 100 to 150 baits in the well, that's a good call. But sometimes you shake them, it'll lift them up. But you want to get rid of as much of it as you can before it enters the well. But you're on a time. It's a time. You're on a time clock there.
Oh yeah.
The longer that bait, after it's gone through the net, been sucked into the boat, flipped up, emptied in, hit the bottom of the thing, pinfish poking it everywhere. I mean, I'm sure if a bait is anything like me, he doesn't like getting poked by a pinfish.
There's some bait over on that side. I've never seen it. But Steve Betts, I want to say, I don't know, he watches our show every now and again. Mm-hmm. Steve, if you're watching or you end up watching the show, put a link to that fish you were talking about. I don't know if it was last year or the year before.
Oh, the one that if it got in the well?
If it got in the well, it's like it shocks everything. So, that could be a possibility too, or maybe it was in your net. Or
that's another thing, Eric, Armando just brought up, have Rejuvenate or the G-Juice or any of those type of products if you want to add something to your well right when it goes in. I remember last year on my Skeeter, I was just having some problems this time of year with keeping bait alive. Not at first, but within a couple hours of my trip, I was down to one well at the time, having a drain issue on the additional well. So I had a 35-gallon well that at times I needed to make work for at least a 6-hour trip or potentially a double, and it was not happening. So I was using a product like that.
A lot of people don't realize too is that there's a lot of live wells that aren't insulated, right? And so you go catch bait on a marker, it's 3 degrees cooler. You catch it at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
You bring it into the flats where already it's 5 to 8 degrees warmer. Mm-hmm. Then now you're at noon, so now that water that was 81 degrees, 78 degrees in the morning is now 95 degrees, and then your live well is probably 92.
Yep.
we used to carry a laser thermometer. We still have it in my tournament kit. We'll check our water, you know. But you'd be surprised how hot the water can get, and you don't realize it.
No doubt.
You know, the difference between, and that's what we'll do, is we'll check the outside water versus what's in the well, and you'll get a difference.
Now, will you manipulate that with ice or anything like that?
Especially
frozen ice block or something?
Yeah, what we'll do is we'll take Gatorade bottles and fill them with water.
That way the fresh isn't getting in there.
Yeah, you don't want anything getting in your water.
Yeah.
You know, in your live well water, but you can definitely float Gatorade bottles. You know, take a cooler full of Gatorade bottles with you, maybe 6, 8, 10 of them, and then just drop them in at 11:30, 12 o'clock. Drop one in, let it run, let it melt, and then when that one melts, put it in and put that one in the cooler. You can just kind of swap
Anybody
them out.
who's live bait fishing right now, you're feeling it. When you stick your hand in the well to grab a bait, or you can feel how hot that is. I made a comment to my clients yesterday after we got cooled off with the rain, and we didn't have any rain gear, and we were soaking wet, and after the wind was blowing, and you stick your hand in a well, and it feels like a bathtub.
Right.
You know, so it's a real thing, man. So there's a lot of different things you can do. A lot of different comments coming from some great fishermen. I know Armando mentioned something, Brian mentioned something. So
the biggest thing though, and we've touched on this over the last few weeks, man, you don't need that much bait.
Yeah.
You don't need that much live bait, especially if you're going inshore. You just don't need it. I mean, it's a mentality thing, but I'll pull the old I've been guiding for long enough card to say that I can promise you you're not going to catch that much more fish if you have twice as much bait.
Right.
It's just not happening. Now, we're catching a lot of bait, and I said a guy at the marker there to go, oh, what are you going to do with all that? Well, I'm not even keeping it alive. I'm putting it in a cooler and we're using it for chum to fish out in the bay. But for live bait fishing, you don't load them down like you would in the spring. You can't. They just won't make it. One of the things that you can do is add an air stone or some oxygen or something like that, and that's gonna get you to the next level. That's gonna get you the ability to keep a little bit more bait by manipulating the dissolved oxygen in the water in your tank. That's what's happening. Because when you get in that hot water, that stagnant water in the backcountry, it's a dissolved oxygen thing.
That was pretty funny because we know Eric well. He's been watching the show for a long time, and we communicate with him regularly, and this was one of his goals this year, is to get dialed in on catching bait, right? And his buddy Shane, so it was a huge moment. He texted me that morning and was like, dude, I got it. I crushed it.
And it all died.
And then 10 minutes later, he texts me. He's like, what could have killed all my bait? But look at what Shane said. I take it Eric mentioned he killed the best bait day he ever had. So, what a series of emotions you must have been going through, Eric, to, black it out and then for the bait to be blacked out.
That's awesome.
But, hey, yeah, that's what I told you. I was like, dude, take all that, cut it up, use it as chum, go do something with it.
Game on, man. Even in the backcountry right now, guys, snook, redfish, and even trout, believe it or not, a big cut thready right now is in the top.
Who'd we run it? Oh, we ran into Kevin when we were pulling my boat out of the ramp
on Saturday.
And he was like, "Hey, you got any bait left?" And I was like, "Yeah, I got 4 live ones and about 30 dead ones."
Yeah.
He went and did what we told him. He put the dead ones in, knocked it out of the park.
Awesome. I mean, there you go. They'll eat them, man.
So good sign. But yeah, this rain, is you touched on it this morning with catching bait. It's definitely going to change things. Something that I heard last week that I didn't hear good reports of the previous week was the crab flushes and how many crabs they're seeing.
So I brought the crab hat.
Got the crab hat today.
That's so skinny water culture.
I hadn't been, and I'll be honest with you, I hadn't been fishing a lot of outgoing tides. Period. For tarpon fishing, so I couldn't have told you yes or no there was a lot of crabs, but I'd been hearing the folks talk and say not a ton of crabs out there.
It's coming.
Yet.
It's coming.
But this week,
the dynamic of tarpon fishing and bay fishing is going to change because those crabs, much like the white bait, much like the threadies, it's all a turn. It's all a rotation of what's happening in the fishery, and the fish respond to it. It makes them do different things. So when those crabs really start dumping out, those big snappers are going to be around.
Yeah.
The cobias will fire off too. I mean, you get a lot. You'll start seeing more cobia up roaming around just on the open. A lot of the cobia that I've seen have been attached to structure, but because that's where their food source is right now.
Yeah.
Their food source is those big thready
All
schools.
of a sudden, they're going to be just on outgoing
when
tides.
when those crabs start flushing out, man, you're going to be catching random cobia out there, tarpon fishing and stuff. Not that you aren't now, but it'll definitely increase. So, we always say that when those crabs start dumping, it's another turn of events.
Yep.
Especially during the summer when you tarpon fishing.
Yep.
So, I know there's been crabs. Some guys have been getting crabs. There's certain areas that the crabs have been flushing out, but the areas that I fish, we haven't seen an influx of crabs yet. So the next moon, game on.
Yeah, which is coming up soon. So that use that as a reminder. Make sure you got a couple crab nets. Those 6 foot. And
the ones here at TFO, the metal ones.
Yeah,
those are legit.
The new have you got one of those yet?
I don't have the new one.
Yeah,
well,
I've got it.
Holding out on me.
Taking it with me.
No, holding out on me.
No, there's two now. There's the wood handle 6-footer with the metal ring.
I have 2 metal ones, but they're like a metal pole, like a
it's a metal pole now. Yeah, and I think they're 7 feet.
I have 2 of those.
Yeah.
I got those last year.
The new one.
I got those last year.
Wow, you must have been on the inside.
No, they had them.
Inside job, really?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well,
but
new as in like just released in the last few years.
All right. Well, I don't know. I didn't know how new they were. I thought they was I thought you were
you
holding out. There was like a pool.
Yeah, I went to pull mine.
Like a pool net deal, like a extender model.
No, there is.
You're not getting crabs from the other guy's boat.
Have you seen the Skyway bridge net that Mr. Lee made? It was like it extends to like 20 feet.
Good gracious.
It's crazy. But it's become this phenomenon. So now everybody knows we're the only ones that have it. Dude, we can't keep them in stock. So the people on the Skyway can get crabs. Can dip crabs at night. So check it out if you don't have it. I know I need to get it because there you go, Nick.
Thanks, Nick. I
Nick's
appreciate
been on
it.
like the tarpon grind, dude. I've seen him out there almost every day last week.
Yeah, I seen him. I seen him the other day. I think most of the crabs though have been out by the beach, if I'm not mistaken, or out in the passes, the main passes. I haven't seen a ton of them flowing up in the bay
yet,
which is where I particularly like to fish. But I know that I talked to who did I talk to? It's either Brett or Ryan, one of those guys out there, and they told me they had a couple good nights where they got a load of crabs. Yep. So I know there's some been flushing, but it's definitely going to get better as we continue through and progress through these next 2 moons. And like I said, I'm more excited. The crabs I like, for me personally, I don't even like fishing with past crabs. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to come right out and say it. Yeah, I know you can catch fish, and I know it's a blast to go catch them and everything. I'd rather have baby blue crabs anyway. And when I go catch crabs, I don't normally go dip net a lot of baby blue crabs. Mm-hmm. I go catch them old school, like lobstering. But what I like is what happens when the crabs start flushing. Those tarpon get a little bit funny. They can go ballistic. You get some good airborne eats. A lot of times when you're fishing on the bottom, that eat is just so monotonous. Like, oh, is it a shark? Is it a tarpon? You're waiting.
It's uneventful. It takes you 20 seconds to figure out what you got. When
that dude comes up and he slams a crab on the surface, it's an instant airborne effect, and it's just so cool. So I enjoy fishing with the crabs. I like the way the fish respond to them.
Yeah, I can't wait. So, getting in that crab time, Skyway was jamming, definitely. We've talked about this. I personally like a big past crab or a smaller blue crab.
The bigger ones I'm okay with. I can't stand it. I know guys are gonna get me for it. I can't stand them like silver dollar size. Yeah. Now what I do like to take them bad boys offshore and go do some permit fishing. I'm down with that, or even just drop them down on the wrecks.
Yep.
They're money.
There was a 2-week period last year where
tarpon, it just drives me nuts. I know they'll eat them. I've caught tarpon on them.
There was a 2-week period last year, I remember, where we couldn't get a tarpon to eat out front unless it was on a small crab.
Small crab.
So usually when I'm going out, there's a certain crab I like to target, like a certain size, and usually the fish have been telling me what that is. But I don't like, oh, that one's too big, oh, that one's too small.
No, you
grab a few of those too.
Sure, absolutely.
Is dead sticking baits in the backcountry the way to go, Reds, with the heat right now? The heat? Yeah, it probably is. Like if you were going to say you have to have one or the other, if you were going to make me decide and you need to go catch a redfish, I'd probably use a cut bait right now. But ideally, I'd like to have some live bait too. In the afternoon yesterday, late in the trip, after a storm rolled through, it calmed down for a little bit, and then after that, it really got miserable. It really started honking, probably about 20 knots, and out of the southwest, it just wasn't happening. So we made the call to go inshore, and I got a lot of fish on live bait. Now, in the past 2 weeks, I hadn't. Now, I can tell you in the area I was yesterday, Sunday at 4 o'clock in the afternoon with the weather the way it was, I didn't see another boat up or down anywhere on that flat but me, and I hadn't seen one on my way out there either. So that probably could be a sign of it, as those fish were just happy, fresh rain, tide started moving, they were ready to eat. But in that, we were catching a lot of snook, and there were signs of redfish, and what the types of swirls I was seeing, just everything I was seeing told me there was redfish, and we'd only caught one up until that point. Threw a couple dead baits out, got 2 more, got a few snook on it, but that ratio started to level out on redfish, and that was your question. When I started mixing in cut bait, started to even out redfish to snook in the same exact spot I was sitting in versus when I was using nothing but live bait.
And I would say it's either spot dependent or tide dependent or where I'm fishing and what I'm doing. It's like you said, with the live bait. Excuse me. If you're around a bunch of snook and you're slinging a lot of live bait, like you talked about, it's a ratio thing. So yeah, you're gonna catch some redfish if they're there, right? They're gonna break through. But a lot of times, if you're fishing in an area that has a lot of snook and there's a few redfish around, I'll either use a big pinfish or a cut pinfish or something like that, and let it sit on the bottom. A lot of times you'll get a bigger snook or something like that. But, they'll definitely eat a live bait this time of year. And personally, with the areas that I fish for redfish, if I was to go strictly red fishing, I would be using the bigger pinfish.
Yeah.
Because the areas that I would be fishing right now would be on those higher tides, and I'd be fishing up under the bushes. Now, there's some guys fishing some small schools out on the bars and down in some certain areas, and you can chum those fish on live bait and get them chewing pretty good. But the way I like to fish and where I would take people fishing is I'd be fishing up under the trees in a couple different areas, and I'd be using either a big live pinfish or a cut pinfish tucked up underneath there, depending on what was going on. So
Thomas, Mike Goodwine gave his reply, and he said no, cut bait won't work on redfish.
No, never does.
So you might want to. Yeah, I would take that with a grain of salt. He might be pulling our chains a little bit. But yeah, actually inshore yesterday was the first time I'd been in. I like fishing around some of those rains sometimes, like after a good rain comes through and kind of slicks out a flat, and you see, man, those mullet and just this, like we went from windy, couldn't see anything going on that flat. Rain sweeps through. 10 minutes later, it's calm, and that flat just came to life, man. It was, and that's always growing up. That was one of my favorites time to fish, like right after a good rain comes through. Just because I like seeing what's going on out there. There goes snook pop. There goes redfish boil. Every little move a fish makes after that slicked out after a rainstorm, you just see exactly what's going on. But yeah, we did well on that yesterday. That was the first time I'd fished inshore in quite a while, a couple weeks.
There was a ton of water, fresh water, from the river. It started clearing up just past the port, which is normal, right? Because we've got water that's going to come out of the river. We've got water that's going to come out of Piney Creek down that way. And all that stuff was pretty murked up. I was in the skiff today, like I said, so we had pretty decent viz from the tower, and I didn't see a lot of fish. We had some pretty high water, and I didn't see a lot of fish pushed up in there. Once I got south of all that and got in some clean water, I found fish. Now, I know the fish were there.
Right, you just hard to see
them.
But
in some of the areas that they'd been stacked up in and clean, nice sand holes, they weren't there. I mean, I would have been able to see them. We fished a few different areas, and over the years, sort of, a lot of times those fish will push off. They won't tuck up.
Further out.
They'll sit out on in that flow, particularly where a lot of this bigger bait population is, which is normal because, something we haven't talked about, guys, is that the snook about fell off the seat. The snook have made that transition to go out to their spawning grounds, right? It's happened, and so just in the last 3 weeks, man, I was poking in, fishing a couple little snook spots on the way in, and those fish are completely gone.
Yeah,
they're completely gone. And I checked another spot that is normally really good, mid to late summer, and it is stacked. and then there wasn't fish like that in there in the last 3-4 weeks.
Right.
So the big snook, if you like fishing big snook, we haven't done any of it yet because, well, tarpon fishing's been pretty good, so we've sort of been zoned in on that. But definitely over the next probably month or so, I'm gonna mix in some big snook stuff because we've got all this tarpon bait and we've got all this gear for tarpon, and these bigger snook are starting to get into some areas where they like to sit for their spawn, pre and post spawn, and so we're gonna target some of those over the next few weeks. But I would say big fish is like the name of like the next couple, next 2 months. The idea is big fish. We've caught big sharks. You catch the tarpon. You catch cobias, groupers. Big snooks. So big reds are around. There's some big redfish around. Last year there was 2 pretty big schools of breeder-sized redfish that came inside the bay that a handful of guys were lucky enough to find. Honestly, that's really what it boils down to. Is
right place, right time.
We talked about checking those bait schools and checking these different areas. There were some guys that found some big giant schools of redfish. Or big redfish, maybe not giant schools, but some big schools of big redfish in schools.
Populations of big fish, schooled up.
Tongue twisters, but they were like with jacks and ladyfish, bluefish. They were mixed in with them, and that whole, checking out the bay buffet kind of deal. So it's all good.
Yeah. Ernie touched on shrimp. I just remember last year. I went on a vacation. I came back for the Florida Redfish Series. Had like a 2-day live bait thing last year, and I flew back from my vacation Friday night, and the guys I was fishing with, I was just like, "You guys still want to do it?" Sure. I haven't fished in like almost a week and a half, 2 weeks, and we did well. But when I came back, I was overhearing a lot of people say, on day one, man, that shrimp was a ticket. Man, that shrimp was a ticket. And day 2, like everybody had shrimp in there. Well, and that was right in the heart of summer. That was like the end of July, I want to say. But yeah, this time of year, a shrimp, especially one of them jumbos up under the bushes, can get it done. I remember there was a shrimp shortage there for a while because everybody wanted them and wanted to go hit redfish with them last year.
And you don't even need them alive.
Armando remembers that tournament. You better, dude. You came through with that day 2 win.
Got to win.
He went a different direction from day 1, but that's having the knowledge to go figure it out. I remember we came in day 1 with like 13.5 pounds and came back saying, "Damn, we can definitely get those fish again." And looking at the field, everybody kind of struggled. So I was like, "Go right back and get the same 2 fish, come right back." And Armando comes through with like 15 pounds on day 2.
The stinger.
Yeah, the stinger.
The stinger.
But yeah, Armando, good fisherman, man. Dude, I gotta call you. I need to check on a spot you and I like to fish. I gotta be up that. I'm gonna be fishing a new area tomorrow, but I'll reach out to you. But what else we got today? Anything else coming up?
Not a ton, man. I know we talked about the tarpon. Talked about some safety stuff.
Some grouper.
What's going on at the store? I know we got some stuff going on at the store. We got some sales, some combo sales.
There's a whole bunch going on. I mean, this is the time of year the store likes to kind of get rid of some new stuff, get rid of some stuff that's been here a little while right before ICAST. So I would say just kind of stay tuned to this page and the Tampa Fishing Outfitters page because you're going to see some definite deals coming up. We're working on something with Humpback to get everybody into that net at the lowest possible cost they can this summer. So just stay tuned. That's there's nothing definitive yet. ICAST is like the next thing. That's pretty much the way the store operates. Is they're going to go into ICAST and find out what's the latest and greatest, what do we think is going to be applicable to our area and fit well in our store, and what is it going to replace. And that doesn't make the replacement obsolete, but it does make it it
opens up some deals.
It opens up the deals, right? Yeah. So there's going to be a lot going on with some deals over the next, I'd say, 30 days. I think that's when ICAST is in 30 days. So being here a little bit today, I overheard everyone talking like, start marking all this stuff that we can that we know we need to get rid of, and some of it's good deals, man. So be ready for it. I can tell you one thing I'm looking forward to with this next moon is a snapper fishing inside our bay.
Oh, buddy.
I've already seen some early signs of what I think is going to be an amazing mangrove snapper season.
As soon as my tiny little snapper baits show up, it's game on. we've been catching them. We've caught a handful. To be honest with you, I hadn't really spent a whole lot of time out there, strictly because, honestly, tarpon showed up early.
Yeah.
For us, inside.
Where you like to, yeah.
Yeah, inside the bay, and so we've sort of been playing with them a little bit. I still don't think, oddly enough, the fish are as happy as they're going to be come later in the next month or two.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been fun playing with them. So we've been sort of dialed in on that. But other than catching some groupers in the mix, I hadn't really been fishing my snapper holes.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward, like you said, to doing that. And I'm really just
waiting on the right bait.
Waiting on the right bait because I like to have the bait to go raise those fish up.
Yep.
A lot of times live bait's the key to that. I mean, you can get them to come up with some dead baits, but I mean, when you get those liveys and they're eating them, they're coming up,
dude. Yeah.
Dude. And when we talked about not being able to stuff your well with these bigger baits, well, it's a new dimension when we start getting these little 2.5-inch baits.
Yeah.
I mean, you can load them down.
No doubt.
You can load them down.
You know what's funny is one of the guides, Stock out there in the past, he'd been seeing me tarpon fishing out there a lot with my groups, and we were talking on Instagram one night. We replied to each other's story or whatever, and he's like, "Yo, bro, I need you to, if
minnow
you can,
net.
I need one of them 3/16 mesh nets." And I'm like, "Dude, I know. I got one at the house."
Yep.
So hooked him up with it, but I know what that's for.
Oh yeah.
You know, that's this time of year. But no, Armando, I'm not fishing the HSO. So I got a group already. I'll be taking out just to do some other style fishing. Couple of people with their kids, so it's going to be more bay fishing style. But good luck, dude. Everybody seems to be on good fish, man. So, you know, and that's another tournament that's a lot of fun and gets really competitive. I think it came down to Glenn and his cousin Armando Martinez last year, if I'm not mistaken, where those guys were like within a half-inch of each other for the slam. Big slams too, like 100-inch slams last year.
Nice.
So give him hell, Armando. You know, wish you the best of luck. Hopefully you're fishing it. Eric, I don't know about Bull Bay yet. We'll see. I mean, they don't really have anything that's obsolete, to be honest with you.
Oh, as far as deals?
Yeah, as far as deals. But all I can say is stay tuned, and I'm sure they've talked to you. Stay tuned to what Bull Bay's got coming up in the next month, because they're going to be making a big splash.
There's some
with
stuff,
of the new stuff
that is unfolding at ICAST, from what I understand, and so I don't really know much more than that about it.
Stay tuned.
So stay tuned.
Cool.
Yeah.
And check us out next week. That's all we got for this week. It's time to go get some food. You fishing tomorrow?
No, I have tomorrow off.
Oh, I'm fishing.
I got tomorrow off.
All right.
I'm excited about it.
Nice.
So.
All right, guys. Well, we'll see you next week, and I think we'll be ready to unveil some big information. I know we've been kind of alluding into it week after week after week, and I think it's all ready. So definitely, if you're a fan of the show, stay tuned. Get with us next week. Same time, same place, Monday, 7 o'clock live. See you guys.